Welcome to Idle Red Hands Weekly. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Nick.
And what is Idle Red Hands Weekly? It is set in an alternate Earth in the year 1906. It is a world similar to our own, with a few notable differences, the most significant of which is the existence of Malifaux. Nick and I are fresh off of a game of the other side.
Yeah.
And that is the description of the setting. So it is a Wyrd Games miniature game. So their previous game, Malifaux, is a skirmish game with individual units. And the other side is more tactical, uses fire teams and larger units and strategies and commanders, whereas Malifaux didn't. Oh, no, we talked
a little bit about it before when we were talking about Malifaux, I think.
Right.
Yeah, as you said, Malifaux was a skirmish game where you got about 10 models with a crew in an alternate world version of Earth, where there's portals have come up and there is another world, and there's a city there called Malifaux that people are harvesting soul stones from to fuel the economy back on Earth. And so that is their flagship game that has had a lot of success. And so Wyrd brought out the other side, which is actually Earthside.
Yes.
And the story is Earthside. A lot of story has developed in Malifaux that is now affecting the Earthside realm, causing pretty much worldwide conflict. And so this is the more of the army-based miniature gaming version of their universe.
Yeah, kind of an escalation of, following kind of the events of Malifaux.
Right.
Yeah, so if you're interested in kind of a review or an overview of the Malifaux skirmish game, Nick and I did that on the podcast a while back, maybe a year or so ago. So
might have been more than a year now, yeah. I think we were just starting on the Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, so we will put a link to that in the notes. So Nick and I went in together when Wyrd did the Kickstarter for the other side, and we did a dual commander pledge, so we each got an allegiance. And so I had the Cult of the Burning Man. Nick had Abyssinia.
That's right, Abyssinia.
Right.
Yes. So basically, the Cult of the Burning Man is a bit like Chaos from Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer Fantasy, where it's a bunch of mad people praising something that's caused the madness, and all sorts of tentacly loveliness is starting to happen. And Abyssinia is basically Black Panther.
Yeah, right.
Wakanda, right?
Yeah,
it's basically Wakanda.
Yes. Steampunk Wakanda.
It's a steampunk Wakanda. Yeah, they're the most highly technical country on Earth, using soul stones before anyone else. And so they have great big titans and robots and highly trained soldiers who all have soul stones built into their armor to make them better, stronger fighters. They're pretty much the space marines of the other side.
Yes. Nice. Yeah. And so the Cult of the Burning Man, like Nick said, is very chaos. And so they're very mobile because they can create portals, and so they can teleport all over. So you have a lot of kind of board control because you can put units on the other side of the board and spawn creatures, and then also make them explode, which we ran into.
Yeah, that was an interesting result in our game. So we've just played one game of this. We've had it for about 9 months now.
Yes.
And we haven't had a chance to actually play the game. So we finally got some time to do it. And we just played a single commander game. The game is built for dual commander. So the idea is that you have two commanders in your side. When you choose your commanders, they come with a certain amount of scrip, which is the money that is used to buy your armies. And so generally they they give you about 25 scrip for each commander. So you choose your commanders, you receive as much scrip as they give you. So if you have two, about 50. And then you can spend that scrip to build your armies. We wanted to just make sure we understood the game first.
Right.
So we played what's called a single commander game. So we only had about 25 scrip to spend. So it's half the size of a regular game. So we played it on a smaller table than usual. It's recommended to play 6x4 foot for the dual commander game and a 4x4 for the single commander game. So we did that. It still seemed to pack our deployment zones at the beginning.
Yeah, it was very crowded at the beginning there.
Yeah. But as you said, there was lots of explosions early on in the game, and lots of things died very quickly at the beginning.
Yes, that's true.
Partially probably due to me not shuffling my deck for the first time very well.
Right.
I was like, there's a 13, there's a 12, there's an 11. I'm seeing a pattern here. Whoops, I didn't shuffle my deck very well. If you don't know anything about Wyrd games, I should say that there are no dice.
Yes, right.
It's a deck of cards. You're basically using a deck of cards. You're scoring between 1 to 13, with a 14 for the jokers, for the red joker, a 0 for the black. So yeah, me pulling out a 13, a 12, and 11 just means I didn't shuffle my deck very well.
The Fate deck is the mechanic that attracted me originally to the Malifaux game, because in Malifaux you have a hand, you have a starting hand, and the difference with the other side is you buy cards, so you have to spend your tactics points each round to actually fill your hand, and there's other mechanics and other abilities that can give you card draw, but if you don't buy cards, you don't have a hand in the first round of this game, so that was very different, and I think we both felt kind of naked at the beginning, and we didn't have a lot of options, because having a hand means you can cheat the results. So basically you're drawing off the top of the Fate deck, and if you're losing, you can, if you have a higher card in your hand or a card of a different suit that will give you some ability or trigger some ability, then you can play that. And starting out with none of that at all was very different.
Yeah. Like you get the tactics tokens that you receive instead of cards. And those tactics tokens allow you to do a variety of different things throughout your turn. But at the beginning of your turn, you've got to decide if you want to spend any of those to buy cards. And then you could get really, really bad cards. And you've basically just wasted your tactics token. And you can't score your objectives in whatever mission you're doing without spending tactics. So every time you want to basically score something or claim an objective or do something like that, you have to spend a tactics token to do it. So us doing a single commander game started us off with 4 tactics tokens and left us going, well, in Malifaux, we start with 6 cards.
Right.
I only have 4 tokens, and I think I want to use these for other things as well. So it was really, really obscure to think about, how do I want to spend these? Do I want to save them, or do I want to actually get some cards? Is it worth getting the cards or not? So I think we both ended up going, let's just buy 2 cards and see where it goes from there.
Right.
Which I think was just fine for us. It gave us a little bit of I feel like I'm in Malifaux again, just a little bit, and I can cheat a little bit without the feeling of being able to cheat like when you really want to. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, that's true. Short of having a card to cheat, you can spend tactics to draw an additional card. So you can mitigate the randomness a little bit just with the tactics points themselves. It still feels very limited, but I think you found out pretty quick that you had a lot of abilities that could replenish those.
So yeah, I was very early on in my turn. I realized that if my commander is very close to certain units, and I get certain triggers to trigger, I start drawing lots of tactics. I start drawing cards as well. So in that first turn, everything was very close together. And every time I did these abilities, I was like drawing a bunch of cards and drawing loads of tactics cards. And by the end of the first turn, I ended up with like 11 tactics tokens and a few cards in my hand. And I was like, oh, right. Okay, now I feel a little bit more comfortable again. So it was like getting the understanding of how the resources are gathered allowed me to relax a little bit more without having to worry about how many cards were in my hand.
Right. The resource management is a little different from Malifaux, so it took a few turns to really understand where certain things were coming from and where you could get card draw and where you could get tactics from.
Yeah, I think in Malifaux, you have your cards that you can cheat with, and it's very clear how you use those. And it's all about the timing in Malifaux. Timing in Malifaux is very, very key. Like, when do I make those things go off? Or when do I really want to defend against something? Or when do I let something through? And when do I make sure another ability is activated for me to win the game? There's a lot of thought in the tactical use of when you want to cheat.
Yes.
In this game, the tactics tokens are very robust in their use because you got a whole bunch of things you can use them on. You can buy cards to cheat with. You can flip an extra card and choose the best result. You can buy stratagems, which were really fun to play around with. Yeah. I was quite surprised. I thought, am I going to use any of these? And then I was like, I'm going to buy this. It was like sometimes 5 tactics tokens to buy 1 stratagem. I'm like, really? You're going to get that many? And I did. I had that in that first turn. I was like, oh, I can buy these really cool stratagems and actually try them out. And I bought one thinking, wow, this is great. Got a whole unit into play. And was like, yeah, I'm like up a whole extra
activation
unit, basically. A whole extra activation, a whole extra unit that can do more stuff, can kill more things, capture more objectives. And then you sent a breachling up its bottom and just detonated it before it could do anything.
The Cult of the Burning Man plays a little crazy, and I should have probably been more aggressive from the start, because I can kind of just jump right behind your lines and not have to like face all of your ranged attacks.
You could tell that if you put The breachlings were a very specific use. I think they're basically used as these kind of suicide bombers.
Right.
But they can only do that if they have shaken tokens on them. So they're fairly squishy and easy to kill off.
Right.
But if you let them get close enough and they have the shaken tokens on them, the player can basically detonate them anytime they like. As long as those shaken tokens are on them, which is quite scary, to be honest. Kind of just destroy them as fast as you can, which you can do. And so that's, I think, where the balance is. If you let them go, they're going to cause absolute mayhem. And there's moments where you have stratagems that kind of bring a bunch of them into play.
Yes.
And that's when you have to kind of deal with them. But that was fun.
Yeah. It's a squishy army, but a lot more deadly than I thought. Yeah, there was some.
Well, they're not completely squishy. The portals were fairly squishy. The moving portals, they died first turn, so we didn't really see what they actually did.
Right.
But the actual main meat of your army.
Oh, right.
Before they activate, get +1 armor, and so it knocked them up to armor 8, I think it was.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it was difficult to knock them down.
Right. Yeah. So they're like kind of possessed zombies, and they were pretty resilient, and their attack is pretty good. Yeah, they have pretty good melee, but you have to get them up the board.
And I was quite surprised when I knocked one down to basically just one fire team, and then you had a couple of reinforcement tokens on it, and straight away it was almost back to full health again.
Yeah, there's some abilities that give reinforcement. If you jump them through portals, you can give them shaken tokens and reinforcement. And shaken for a non-demonic force is kind of fear. Your fear is being caused, and you can use that to give them negative penalties to their attacks. But for the Cult of the Burning Man and kind of their demons and zombies, it actually is what flips them to glory. And glory is kind of an enhanced version of the unit that happens when they're kind of inspired by success in battle, and they become more powerful and have an additional ability usually.
I noticed with my army, a lot of the abilities is if I turtle a bit with my commander. My commander with some of the units, he can reinforce them a lot and do a lot of things to support the units and make sure that they survive. And if they kind of sacrifice themselves for the commander, they gain certain abilities or cards or flip to glories and things. So there's a lot of kind of encouragement to turtle with this army. But with the scenario we played, I kind of had to split them up.
Right.
But I could see how the temptation to try and just use all those abilities could have made me completely lose the game because I don't spread out. So I just kind of ignored those benefits and went out and did other things. And that, I think, is what, in this game, won me the game.
Yeah, that's true. Initially, I get to place portals on the board. And so with my specific commander, I can do 4. And so I just kind of all 4 corners of the board got occupied very quickly with portals. And so I had a lot of mobility. And that I think that did make you have to be more aggressive and kind of go after those corners.
Yeah, so there was a couple of things that allowed me. I could basically piggyback on a bunch of my units when they pulled off a trigger and allow my commander to go right up the table right at the beginning.
Yeah, right.
But after that, I couldn't get any of the benefits because the commander was now separated from the rest of the army. But he basically just ran around your area of the board placing objective markers, basically. Going, we're going to make sure we're going to get the points. Going to make sure we get the points. And it was a good use of him because he has a big movement. He couldn't give any of the benefits that he's supposed to do to the rest of the army. It meant I lost out on a few things, but it did mean that I just kept on scoring objectives when that's the main point of the game.
Right.
It was just a shame where I was like, oh, this will be really, I can't do it. It's too far away. Oh, what about, no, it's too far away.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had that stratagem too that allowed you to activate him twice in a turn.
That was key. Yeah. Because I would literally just activate him, drop an objective, and then go, hey ho, I can use him again.
Yes.
Because I spent my tactics tokens on this, and then he goes again and drops another token, drops another marker. And yeah, as long as I had tactics tokens, I was good to do a lot of things.
What are your thoughts about the miniatures? Now that we've got mostly painted armies, I'd say like 90%, 95% painted armies. And what did you think about working with the miniatures? And
my initial concern with painting the miniatures was possibly because of the waxy feel to them, that they might not hold the paint very well, or they might scratch easily and things. But that wasn't the experience. It was fine working with painting them. And the ones which are fairly small, like my Mehal Safari and the Crow Runners, just general models, they all came fine and they stuck on to their base is fine. So I think those were very useful for maybe beginners. But some of the other models that have like smaller parts or thin areas, or are heavy in certain areas and light in others, were often bent out of place. And it requires a lot of work to fix them. So you're working with plastic, so it generally means pouring boiling water over them, setting them into place, and let them dry in that position so that it kind of sets in that position again. And you're kind of basically readjusting all of the positions of everything. And I still haven't gotten a bunch of it straight because they're just so difficult to get into position, which means that models that I have assembled out of plastic have been a lot easier to assemble than these pre-assembled models.
Right.
And that is not a good selling point for a game that is supposed to be beginner friendly in terms of the hobby. And that, I think, is where they were trying to aim with this. And I think it hasn't sold to people that want pre-assembled models. I think when you have like the pre-assembled models or just cast models and things, it's the smaller scale stuff. Like the Simon games things are good for that. But even I think, what is it, the Game of Thrones,
the Song of Ice and Fire,
that
miniatures
I think has pre-assembled models.
Right.
They're all fairly decent, or if the repairs are there, they're fairly easy to do is what I've heard. And the game itself just draws people in a lot. This one, I think the game is very, very good, but I do think they maybe misread who the target audience should have been for this.
Yeah.
I would have been happy with assembling these models in hard plastic. I've been very happy to have done it.
Yeah.
And then I think I would be very pleased with all the results. My Basotho cavalry, having horses with one hoof on the ground.
Yeah.
They're literally just bent over until the whole horse is lying on the floor with a hoof stuck in the ground. So I know that the only way for me to get that in the position that I want is me going to be drilling holes and sticking wire in and then hiding the wire in mounds of chipboard and things.
Right.
And try making an interesting base out of it. That's not beginner friendly.
No, that's true. Yeah.
You know, that I'm still not confident with drilling holes in my miniatures.
Yes.
But it's something that I've started doing so that I can like replace things and make things easier to pack. The Titan, his legs are very big and he's wide and he's like a big spider. And he's got basically 3 legs. He's very wide. So I just snapped off one of the legs and then drilled holes so that I could clip him on. And then when I carry him anywhere, I just clip off the leg and lie him down and he's suddenly flat packed.
Yeah.
He should have been something that I could assemble in the first place.
Right.
So I could have done that from the beginning rather than having to snap off a bit that they've glued on anyway.
Yeah, that's a bit frustrating because I think Malifaux, their original miniatures, I guess more the plastic miniatures, they had very dynamic posing. And I think they wanted some of that with these miniatures. And they don't come attached to bases. They're assembled, but they're not based. And so there are some miniatures that with really tiny hoof, feet or, some flowing cape that's what's supposed to attach to a base. And it's, just not very beginner friendly, but it looks nice, but it's not very practical.
Yeah. And it's not straight out of the box play.
Right.
Which I think if you're going with pre-assembled, that's what it's got to be.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, then just go with the construction. Because also they can save on space on their boxes. Their boxes are huge.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very big. And also, like I think Song of Ice and Fire or some of the other pre-assembled games, they do colored plastic. So initially you can recognize the differences between the allegiances on the table because one is green and one is red. And that is more out of the box play. And I think that's something they missed on. But we don't really know that maybe what they had to work with, like the difficulty of the material that they chose may not accommodate that so easily.
Yeah, there is a lot of detail held in these miniatures for pre-assembled. Some are a little bit too smooth on some areas, but mostly I've been very pleased with what I have to be able to work with when I'm painting. It's just fixing a model that's pre-assembled just seems silly to me. I enjoy assembling a model, and so then fixing the small things that are wrong with it after assembly doesn't really bother me too much.
Right.
But getting a pre-assembled model that I have to fix, that just drives me nuts. And I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it. And so that's why my Basotho cavalry have stayed unpainted and a bit floppy.
Right. So what is your ultimate verdict on the game? Do you think would you recommend it? Is it a fun game to play? Is it a nice evolution of Malifaux and an interesting, different styled game to play in that world? Or is it still not quite there yet?
Hard to say until we've played the Dual Commander game, I think.
That's true.
So This is where our game, like we played a single commander game on a scenario called Set Traps.
Yes. Yeah.
And with that, it meant that we were basically setting traps on the other person's side of the board. With how much died early on, it then freed up a lot of the board. And we started setting traps everywhere on each other's side. Right. And it ended with a score 39-36. Right. Which I feel in a dual commander game would not happen.
Yes, that's true.
We would have to try it in a dual commander game and see what the score was. But I feel like this game is not supposed to really go over 20 points for a side.
Yeah.
However, it was close throughout. You were leading by quite a bit early on, and then you could see that I was catching up quite a lot. And then by the end, I was able to just knock it over past you. But it did seem a bit silly that we're scoring like 12 points in a single turn. Right. But I feel that was the fact that we're not playing it as it's meant to be played yet. Playing a single commander game, which is a valid form of the game. We haven't tried the dual commander. I am very curious about trying the dual commander game. I really like how the assets work and things. So commanders have 1 hit point. You get that hit point down and he's gone, he's dead. But he has assets equipped to him. And those assets can be burnt to prevent damage. And it's really cool how you can basically flip it. It'll tell you how much it can reduce damage by. You flip it and it's broken. You can't use it. But then it's scrap that can still act as armor, basically. Right. That can still reduce a wound off if a wound comes in. So I wasn't able to kill your commander. You didn't even try killing mine. But I could see in a 2 commander game where you could focus fire down a commander and take him out. But it would take effort.
Yes.
I like the fact that you could make those decisions. Really want to try with a Titan.
Yeah, me too.
Because that's one of the pulls of the game is these giant, massive models. Again, the Titan has 1 wound.
Right.
But it has 3 assets. And seeing how the assets work with commanders, it's kind of easy now to see that, okay, yeah, it's not going to be that easy to take down unless you really focus fire the thing down.
Yeah. And assets can be repaired as well. So
that's right.
They include abilities. And so when they're damaged, you've turned the card over and you lose that ability. So your character is weakened, but they can be repaired. So you can bring them back up to full health, just as you can bring the members of the fire teams can be restored with reinforcement tokens.
That's right. That's right. I think it's going to be a fun game. It's a hard sell for someone just coming into the hobby.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea is to bring, I think, new people in with something that's pre-assembled, but I would not recommend a new person to start with this.
Right, right.
I would still recommend perhaps Malifaux over this, even though the assembly is much harder. Once you've assembled it, though, it's good to go.
Yeah.
The fact that you have to repair a bunch of these things is more of an obnoxious thing than having to build your own model and feel proud for building it.
Yeah.
So I would still recommend Malifaux as a start point to build models, paint models for a first time, because you only got 10, and then play a game.
Yeah.
This one, you can't... How many models? There's a lot of models, basically. And as you said, they're not pre-colored or anything. So playing with just 2 grey armies is, as someone who has played a lot of tabletop gaming, I'm not keen on that. I'm really not keen on that. But I'm sure maybe a new person isn't as bothered as I would be.
Yeah, I don't think I would have enjoyed the game as much had I not played Malifaux before, because I like the kind of expansion of the lore, and I like that you're not like using a dry erase marker to track health and stuff. Pulling the miniatures off the bases was nice because you visually could see how weak your forces were.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you didn't have to ask how many wounds has he got left,
right,
or anything like that. It works as a very visual game. You can see how weak or strong a unit is that's left. It has that depth, which is really, really nice. But again, it takes time to learn that depth. So it's a game that you do have to play again and again to get good at and speed up your game. I was hoping to actually play a couple of games, but
me too.
It was just not going to happen because we were just learning how everything works. I'm glad we didn't start with a dual commander game because we would still be there and I'm sorry, I got to go home. We're only halfway through. But yeah, it got us used to how the rules work, and we had to bend our minds around that a little bit because of coming from Malifaux.
Yeah, I think
Malifaux plays it like this, but this does not play it like this.
Right.
So I think it was a nice, fresh approach to try. I enjoyed the game, which was important.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, and I like the theme is so great, and I think they did a nice job of making what is supposed to be a larger scale army battle. It works well. As soon as you know the rules, I think it's going to be a pretty agile game. I think you'll get through it pretty quick.
I think the factions as well are pretty clear on how they play. And so if you know what kind of person you are and how you like to play your games, you can choose the faction that's right for you. And to a certain extent, I think I've chosen the right faction for me. I like having the superpowered guys that have a lot of success and maybe have a few, have a very small number of models or a smaller number of models than the opponent, but you can kind of trust in their abilities and they can reinforce one another and do all those things. I kind of like playing like that. So having that ultra high-tech Wakanda-esque army was good for me. And then seeing the Cult of the Burning Man, they literally fly around the board like crazy and going through portals and things and doing all kind of clever tricks. I can see how that can pull to that type of player.
Yeah.
I know that with the Gibbering Horde, it's all about numbers. So if you like playing orcs in 40k or Tyranids, that's kind of the army there. And they play a lot with reinforcement tokens. So they're constantly reinforcing themselves again and again. So there's just a tide of monsters. And that's kind of another nice thing. Like in 40k, if you want to play orcs or Tyranids, you need a lot of models.
Yeah.
But in this, instead of saying like you need loads and loads of models, it's like basically the way the army works is with lots of reinforcement tokens, so that when things die, they just come back. So you still get the feeling of the tide of things, but you don't need a tide of models.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
To a certain extent. So I think they would be a very interesting army to play. And then if you like just like shooting things, then you got basically the Imperial Guard.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
I forget the King's Empire.
King's Empire, right. I hope they support. So they showed images of 2 additional factions that there are no models or stats for, and then we also got models from 2 other factions where we each the name.
So at the moment, they're basically like Alliance envoys. Is basically what it is. At the moment, that's what they are, and they have a couple of models that can be added to your general alliance. So there's, I guess it's 2 alliances: Earth and Malifaux.
Right.
But then there's armies or factions within those alliances. So Abyssinia and the King's Empire are both Earth factions. So they can also get envoys from the guild.
Right.
In the main rulebook. And then the Gibbering Horde and the Cult of the Burning Man are Malifaux factions. So they can get Malifaux envoys from Court of Two. Yes. Court of Two. But they are now going to be fleshed out into fully formed factions that can be used. So I'm sure they're going to have envoys from Abyssinia and King's Empire and Cult of the Burning Man and from the Gibbering Horde that can cross over all of those 6 factions. But there's a couple of more hinted at, which is basically like an Oni demon, kind of Asian demon army. Then there's the 3 kingdoms. There's 2 different armies. 3 kingdoms would be the Earth side, kind of an Asian mafia built across 3 Asian kingdoms. I think it's Japan, China, and Philippines or something like that. And it looks Kimon, which looks like basically Japanese demons, possibly Asian demons from the Malifaux side. So they could be interesting. I don't really know if anything's coming out soon with them or anything like that. I haven't heard anything, but we shall see.
Yeah. I hope the game gets good support. I don't know how popular it is at the moment, but I hope that they really do keep supporting and developing new forces. That would be a shame because it's a very playable game, and I think the more that we get into it, I think the more we're going to enjoy this different style.
The game is very good. I think they just missed the mark with how it is produced.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Well, you recently did something interesting. The game that we had been playtesting in kind of a prototype form with, just kind of cards and a playmat, you put into Tabletop Simulator.
Yes. Well, I put it in.
Yes.
We'll see how it goes from there. So yeah, it was quite a while ago that I basically made a game and I was printing all the parts and we were playtesting it in a few places, and yeah, it seemed fun. It seemed all right. I decided, because I got all the assets there, I was like, maybe I can just put it in Tabletop Simulator and that will save me a lot of time if I want to playtest it more and develop it more. So I just went about taking all of the assets that I've created so far and plopped them straight into Tabletop Simulator, and it was actually very easy to do. And I've just had a quick practice with it myself at home, and it seems to play okay, pretty much as it plays when you actually have the board in front of you. And so now I'm going to be sharing that with some friends to try and play it when we have some time.
Nice.
If that's good and it works okay, I might then decide to put it on the workshop.
Nice.
Once the rules are written. That's the bit that's the most boring. I've knocked together a very, very simple PDF that explains the rules, but I need to clean it up. I need to add in visual graphics to make it a bit easier to understand, because at the moment it's descriptions of things that you can look at, and that never
Yes.
That's never easy.
Right.
So having something a bit more visually easy to read, I think you can play the game a bit more easily.
So keep us posted on that. And if you make that available, we'll definitely link that on the website so you can get some people checking out your game. Yeah. So what was the title?
At the moment, the working title is Scorched Earth. And it's a 2 to 4 player game about having a faction of post-apocalyptic characters facing one another, not in direct combat, but basically they decided that post-apocalyptic world is dangerous enough as it is. We don't need to be killing each other over everything.
Right.
But how about we just prove our worth by collecting trophies from the wasteland? And so you could enter the wasteland with the characters and kill monsters to bring back as trophies to stick in front of your base. And then when you get enough trophies, you become the king of the wasteland. But you have abilities to mess with your opponents with schemes by stealing their trophies or kind of poisoning their food supply so they all become irradiated. And then there's also like weather effects as well, where the wasteland itself is either working with or against you. And then you have to manage all of your factions, people's food. Food is the resource of the game. I remember in the initial things we had food and we had money and all sorts of things. But food is basically, everything is bought with food. Food is the thing. So you use food to, of course, keep hunger away. But you can, if you have an abundance of it, you can buy equipment and things. You also pay for medical treatment and getting unradiated.
Yes.
I guess. And doing all those things. So you have to manage your characters. And if they become too hungry, they can die from starvation. And if they become too irradiated, they get debuffed.
Right.
In encounters and things. And then if that drops even further, then they can die from that. Of course, wounds as well. And it basically works on a very simple system of just rolling one dice. You have a D10, and that's the only thing you need. Each faction has a D10, and that's it. That's all you need. You just roll that one dice. You add modifiers to the result, and then compare it to the score that you're aiming to beat. And then whatever the difference is the damage you cause to an encounter, or whatever the negative difference is, how much damage is caused to you.
Right.
So it's kind of like a simple system to just be like, you just deal with everything with one dice. There's lots of little ways where you could use characters to buff each other and do different things. Certain characters are good at scavenging, some are good at combat, but having a balance across them is kind of important, because if you just have combat and you don't win a few combats, it's very difficult to then get food to keep you going. I enjoy playing it from time to time, so that's always a good sign when you're making a game that you enjoy it.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, the early versions that we played together, I really enjoyed the setting, and the mechanics work really well together. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how it continues and how you continue to refine it, because it's very playable, and I like the different flavor of the different tribes or different gangs. They all have the kind of a unique play style or unique mechanics that gives you a good kind of feeling of the setting itself.
Yeah. It's enjoyable to do.
Nice. So you do some painting online occasionally?
Oh, not these days, I'm afraid. No.
But on Twitch, so you have a Twitch channel.
Once I can start actually playing this game with a few people, I'm probably going to put it onto the Twitch channel, but I can't promise that I'm going to be painting on that Twitch channel very much. I should. I've been playing video games these days just because I've been busy and I haven't had time to paint, and I've just been able to do a bit of playing games here and there. I should probably just Twitch that stuff,
right.
just to keep the channel moving. But I'm sorry, it's been a bit dead lately. Maybe this should be the kick up the butt to restart that.
There you go. Yeah. So what's the name of your channel?
Zombie Sashimi.
Nice. So we'll put a link, to your Twitch channel. Thank you. And is there anything else? Any other ways people can find you online?
I've got an Instagram. That's also Zombie Sashimi. Again, that one's been just a little bit quiet lately. A bit more active than my Twitch channel. Just because when I have been painting, I've only had a short time to paint, and it's been hard to set up my table for Twitch streaming at the moment. I'm hoping to reconfigure my whole setup so that I can use my microphone arm to hold the camera rather than setting up a tripod over my table so you get a good view. Not the best system. If I can figure out a good way to hold my camera on my table, then I'll do that. I'll do it a bit more maybe.
I do a live stream weekly of my single panel gag cartoon. So Abusecartoons.com is the home of that cartoon. And on Twitch, twitch.tv/Abusecartoons. There's an archive of the live streams on YouTube. So the YouTube channel for Abuse Cartoons. And if you'd like to follow the podcast, idleredhands.com is the homepage. And on Twitch, idleredhands. And also follow us on Twitter at idleredhands. If you want to be involved in the podcast itself, let us know what we should look at next, give us input, and get involved in some of the games and reviews. Please visit patreon.com/idleredhands. So that's all for this week. So thanks for joining me, Nick. And we will talk again once we have gotten further in the other side and maybe back to Infinity and some of those other games.
Thank you.
All right. So talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
To the road, the sounds of a car on the